Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group. And tonight we're going to be talking with Bishop Tony Caldwell. We're going to be talking about the high murder rate that Kansas City has had over a substantial amount of time. I'm looking at the last 3 years, and especially the last 2 years, I believe the homicide rate has gone up. And without further ado, someone that is really involved on a grassroots and hits the pavement and really has their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the community. And I'm saying the grassroots community. Uh, Without further ado, Bishop Tony Caldwell. How you doing, Bishop?
I- I'm I'm blessed, but I'm saddened at the same time point. I'm blessed to be here, but I'm saddened that we have to have this conversation. And it annoys me. It pisses me off because there's a lot that can be done about certain things, and we're just not doing it. We're just not.
Let's go down the road. As I said, I looked at this from uh, when we really were talking about the rise in the homicide rate, and this was like 3 years ago. And since then, uh, when the mayor came into office, he said he was going to try to do some things, and it's not solely on the mayor's responsibility because it's a much larger problem. But I'd like for you to give some background and some context to where we find ourselves today with how many homicides, to your knowledge, we've got approximate.
The overall total keeps rising every day. But I know for the past 5 years, let's just talk about the children that's underneath the age of 13. Underneath the age of 13 years old, babies. There's even one that was only 1 month old. We've had 21 children murdered due to the senseless violence and homicides in our city today. That is ridiculous when the babies are being murdered here. If I know the mayor came in, he said that he was going to reduce the rate. Everyone keeps talking about they're going to reduce the rate, but it keeps rising higher and higher. Uh, we have a giant disconnect in our city right now. And our disconnect is we have these meetings, and I go to meetings all the time. I had to stop going to them because they started to tick me off. We'll go to meetings and we'll sit around like us. I'm gonna throw myself in there. We will sit around, have meetings talking about what we should do with the youth, what they need, what we're gonna do for them. But we never actually engage the youth that are actually out in the streets. We'll engage youth that's been there years ago, 15, 20 years ago. These streets change daily.
That
I don't think they
landscape
understand it.
is no longer there. And I hate saying this stuff, but I always say it for the benefit of the youth. Uh, I'm a gangster posing as a businessman. And so I know what the streets were in my day, but the
Mm-hmm.
streets are totally different now. Even the
Yes.
policing is totally different now.
Yes.
And I'm a major proponent of managing from the bottom up. Ever since I've been in Kansas City, it's not just with the police department, City Hall in general, uh, and the establishment in general, they want to manage from the top down. And that has not worked real well. Now, it's my understanding last week you had some young people as a guest on your Monday night. I wanted to say your soiree because a you have a ton of people that come to your Monday night meeting. I was there a couple of months ago, and you let me present what we do here at Cascade Media Group. And
Yes.
uh, I said I had got so many calls last night on there were 3 murders or 3 homicides or something. And I said, let me call the bishop, because one thing I give you, Caldwell, you have never been squeamish about preaching or speaking truth to power. And I don't really try to bring
Yes.
ministers and bishops on, because a lot of them, they have their congregation and they have this and that, and they don't be giving me or my audience the truthful answer about some of our problems. But you said that you had about 15 of these youth, and I asked you before we even got online, I mean on the air, I said, how old were they? And you gave me their ages, and you were saying this is altogether different. And then I asked you how intelligent and who speaks for them, and you was saying that the gentleman, I forgot what the gentleman's name, but he was super intelligent, and you thought he was pinning the tail on the donkey. Uh,
Yes.
Go ahead.
We had a gathering. It's called Level Up KC, and the young people put it on. And it's a group of them that come together from performers, artists, rappers, singers, promoters. I mean, businessmen. But these are our youth, and they're entrepreneurs. But they're also the ones out on the streets. We got some that's out on the streets every day. So that crowd they deal with all the time. It's not like, hey, I went to college and I'm going to come back and talk to the youth, or I'm going to talk to youth in high school. That ain't the problem. The college kids aren't the problem. The kids in high school, they in school. Yeah, they get out in there fighting all that stuff, but that's not the problem. The kids, the youth that are actually out here on the streets, we tend to not even touch or talk to. Check this out. We will always have these meetings. We will always have these forums and panels with us being on the panel talking about the youth, and the youth aren't even in the room. We'll talk about what we're going to do for them. We're going to put a basketball game on for them, and we're going to do this for them, and we're going to serve them hot dogs and hamburgers. We do that all the time. And they're like, we ain't in none of those places. We're hanging out over here. You won't even come over and talk to us. And then when you do come down our street, you got a bullhorn telling us to pull our pants up, but you're not talking to us. You're talking about us. That's the problem. I'm going to tell you what happened the other night. We had some folks that were supposed to come to the meeting. I had some folks that I contacted from the city and different other places. And, some of them came, some of them didn't. But the youth reached out themselves. Now, here's the part. Around me, contacted some city officials, contacted some different community leaders, some pastors. These pastors, these community leaders, these city officials promised these youth that they would be there. You know what happened? They didn't show up.
You don't have to tell me what happened. Tell the audience what happened.
Yeah, they didn't show up. And when they didn't show up, the youth said, see, that's the problem right there. They promise us stuff. They tell us they're going to be there. They come up with excuses and everything else. And you wonder why we don't trust them or listen to them anymore. They full of BS. And they are quick to tell us the truth. And what happened that night? We had shootings after shootings after shootings. We let them down. When we let them down, we see a retaliation later on. Because at that time point, they're like, you know what? Whatever's going to happen in the streets is going to happen in the streets. They get discouraged about talking each other out of killing folks on the streets. If no one's backing them up, if no one's listening to them, what happens? This is why our crime rate keeps going up and up and up, because we keep throwing money in the wrong areas at the wrong time. I'm tired of seeing people do studies and analyzing something in Kansas City, throwing money at that, and it never makes it down to the grassroots level to where we can actually be effective.
Let me say this. I don't feel that they're doing the studies to change the environment. They're doing the studies to give their associates big contracts to say they did something. Because, uh, as I've said to you off camera and to my constituents, for the last 30 years, 25 at least, you can face it or you don't have to face it. The only way to get ahead is friendship,
Hmm.
kinship, and politics. And
Yeah.
I will say that to people want to merit has nothing to do with it. And
Mm-mm.
from my perspective, the black bourgeoisie, the ones that have 750 credit score or over, they have moved out our community, especially here in Kansas City. A lot of the movers and shakers, or they think they are, move over to North Kansas City, and the real poor and indigent here in this city, they're left without a voice, and
Yes.
the ones that are supposed to be representing them, they're really not doing a bang up job. I'm not going to say that they're not representing at all, but they're not representing the way the bottom 2/3 of the people would like to be represented. And they don't have that voice because they're not plugged in. As I said to you, I can't take any city official or head of any black organization uh, serious when you're not plugged into the only black owned digital media company that has a cornucopia of knowledge and is a suppository for black culture, which is Cascade Media, where uh, you can get information and you can receive information. Every other community has these things, but we don't seem to value these things. But we do value, and the leadership knows, but they do not want to support anything financially that is not uh, parroting their uh, narrative. And that goes for the mayor and the rest of them. They want to create organizations to solve a problem with words instead of deeds. And companies like ours that don't, I'm not complaining about the support because it is what it is. But when you
Hmm.
dissect what the problem is, it is the leadership does not want the bottom 2/3 of our community to awaken. And you cannot solve any problem in our community that is going to benefit the bottom 2/3 of our community without having a robust conversation with them.
It's not going to happen. Big. I'm sharing this with you. Watch this. And this was many, many years ago. We did something in Kansas City. We had a day of peace. We asked everybody just stay at home. Don't kill nobody. Don't shoot at nobody. Don't argue with nobody. Just stay at home in bed. Sleep all day. I don't care what you do. Nobody does anything. Now, this was over almost close to 18 years ago, right? Now, with this happening, what ended up happening was the calls went down for the police department. Chief Corbin called me one day, and it was the day of this action. And he said, "Hey, Caldwell, don't go home." I said, "What? Don't go home? What do you mean?" He said, "What y'all did was too effective." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I had to send a lot of my officers home today, and they're pissed because they're not making that money because they were just sitting around doing nothing, just sitting doing nothing." He said, "So don't go home because they're a little pissed. Some of them know where you live at, and they might drive by. But I'm gonna tell you what the effects happened. That one day where we didn't have a bunch of arrests, that one day that nobody got locked up, we felt that for 4 months later. Court cases, none. Fines, no. Probation officers, I mean, it had a trickle effect down, not knowing that crime is a big business to others, not to us, but people make money off of what we do, and we can't affect that area or they get pissed. Right now, you see a lot of that. They get pissed because they didn't build all these community organizations off of crime.
Penitentiaries. Let's not leave them out.
Oh, they have dummied down schools.
Well, I wanted to speak on the school situation, because what you have with the schools at this point, they're really off the tracks. They're not even on the railroad tracks. And behind the financial crunch, they cannot get rid of kids that are bad influences because they need the money that the state gives for each kid. And it's become a financial thing. And so from a grassroots standpoint, being plugged in to the bottom 2/3 of your community, they would like better education and this and that. And they depend on our congressmen, our city council, our educators to provide that. But most of them are cowards when it comes to speaking truth to their constituents. And they're not even savvy enough, as I say, build your own house, block voting, and group economics. That is the measure of community. I'm going to touch on another subject, this Palestinian-Israeli thing. And the Jews will never let you forget that 2 million Jews have been killed in the Holocaust. Let's say 3 million, be generous. Over 40 to 50 million Black people were lost coming here, and you can't hear a mouse piss on cotton about that. You can't hear nothing, and people denigrate us as Black people for some time. But there has been periods, especially here in Kansas City, where Black people worked together. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, Charles Hasley, Bobby Hernandez, there was a political arm, and then we still had contractors and we had Black businesses. If you were going to do business in our community with the school district and Highland Dairy's delivering milk, then what is Highland Dairy doing in your community? What and our politicians are so busy having photo ops and building. I want to be the next mayor, or what their political career, that they're really not putting resources at the ground level to improve the conditions that will take some time to do. Planting that seed, starting Vogue Techs. And we might not see the benefit, but there will be benefit. But the way the political landscape is, they want instant results. And
they don't know how to see it through. And they're not willing to work with those that are doing it. You know, we have put in the past 5.5 years over $7.5 million into this community. Over $7.5 million the Justice Center has put into this community. We haven't got no grants. We haven't got no loans. This is out of our own pocket. That scares them because they can't control us because we're using our own money. We're investing, we're doing things, and we're teaching the youth how to invest. We're teaching them trades. We got our own Votech school. A lot of people didn't know that. We're teaching education. We're teaching computers. We're teaching culinary arts. We're teaching that at the Justice and Dignity Center. The reason we're doing that, because guess what? None of that's happening in the schools now. You tell me one school on the inner city that is teaching home economics? Zero. If I can get you going out buying this stuff from McDonald's every day, something unhealthy every day, you're unhealthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and then I can control you. We're teaching the kids that, you know what, you have to eat healthy, you have to think healthy, you have to be healthy. And in doing that, we're teaching political, we're teaching politics, we're teaching these areas, finances, because if we don't teach each other, who in the hell will?
Well, where I'm at, we don't get involved in things that are not duplicatable and scalable. And a lot of things can be scalable, but the people have to be willing to participate. And as I said, there's no other community. You have the NAACP. I call them out. The Urban League, Urban Summit. There are a host of others that I just can't pull right off the top of my head. How can you not do business with the only Black-owned digital media company in the Midwest that provides instant access? How can the mayor of Kansas City don't support the only Black digital media company out here? How can the county, the same way? Black people don't spend money. Black people don't have interest. Anyone in Kansas City has been on our shows. We provide sports, politics, history, all of that. So what that tells me, that all of them have an agenda that is not genuine in regards to the bottom 2/3 of our community, finding out what they want to see happen, and then trying to come together to implement a strategy that will help make some of these things that they see are important in their lives. You say you need some soda. They say we need some solid food. We need fresh vegetables. We need this. You say, I'm going to give you a Snicker. And that's been going on for some time. But the bottom line, the would-be representation, I'm not even going to say that they leaders, because any leader would recognize the importance of rapid communications. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist on what I'm saying. And what I'm saying to my public, examine what your council person is really doing. Examine what your county legislators. What I see is a lot of photo ops. That's what I see. And they are trying to convince you that they're working on the behalf of your community. But when you look at your community, and the measure of a community is its economic prowess and its voting ability to have a voice. And our political establishment that represents the Black and brown people of Kansas City have done a very poor job on that. And they can try to flip the script on Mr. Nelson, but the average person, that I'm speaking in the King's English, understand and can connect the dots on what I'm saying.
Well, the youth have echoed what you're saying, because in listening to them this weekend and over the years, they know who they can trust and who they can't trust. And because of that, there is a disconnect now. They don't listen to them. And because of that, it's a shame that we've lost a whole generation behind us and our jockeying for positions so much that we lost the next generation. Check this out. Remember I told you that we've had over 21 babies murdered? I asked a group of community leaders this the other day. I said, can you tell me the name and the age of the second youth that was murdered this year? None of them could come up with it. None of them didn't even know if it was a boy, girl, how old, where it happened. They had not a clue. I said, now I want you to understand this. That's the problem right there. It's happening so much. Y'all so busy. Y'all have desensitized a baby. If you can desensitize a baby dying, you can desensitize a whole community. And that's what you've done. You could desensitize a whole community and that bottom 2/3 need. It doesn't matter anymore to you. So what we're going to do on Memorial Day, you know Memorial Day, right? Coming right up in a couple of weeks. We're going to put it right back in your face. We done paid for a memorial, a digital memorial with the names of all those babies that have been murdered, killed, shot for the past 5 years due to the senseless violence. We're going to put that memorial right in the middle of the neighborhood, 31st and Paseo, right there, biggest day. Put the lights on the whole 9 yards. Every child's name that has been murdered due to the senseless violence is going to be up on there. The reason being, you're not going to be able to say, I don't know anymore. You're going to be able to pass by there every day, every week, every hour. And it's going to remind you, every time you forget about us, you can't forget about them. We're going to put it back in your face. And I don't care who gets mad, who gets upset, but those babies, those angels, we cannot overlook them anymore like we've been overlooking our community.
Where Miles has his center at, that on Prospect.
Oh, no.
No, listen. So I used to own the corner of 27th and Prospect on the east side of the street. I had my Goodfellas Pizzeria restaurant there. And this is 25 years ago. Every murder, they was putting a cross there. And then HBO or one of them came and did a special about 27th and Prospect. And they had 100 and something crosses and all of that. So this is just another page out of a playbook to draw attention. Once that got on HBO, man, I was getting calls from my classmates from around the country. Man, aren't you in Kansas City? Is that right? Yeah. And so that's the importance why I keep saying about Cascade Media. Yeah. Until you put it in their face and put it in their face on an everyday basis, they're not going to change.
You got to, and I remember that. I'm gonna tell you why. And I remember the decrease in the homicides because you could not miss it. People seen it, and when they seen it, that's like, you know what I'm doing, I can't afford to either be one of those crosses, or I can't afford to have somebody else or my family members there. So they would deter family members from going and doing stuff. We don't have that now. It's out of sight, out of mind.
That's right.
And because of that, look, we don't talk about it. We act like it's an everyday thing. And nobody is saying enough is enough. They'll say it when the TV camera's around, but what about beforehand? When there's no cameras around, what you gonna do then? See, that's why you gotta put it in their face, keep it in their face every day. These community groups today, they're too scared to do that.
Let's move on. Before we close out, I want to talk about these young community activists that's been out in the street. And I said to you, if you feel that strong about them, how about having whoever is speaking for that group, we'll give them a platform once a week to have some dialogue with our community, and they can have their constituents tune in to what they are putting forth as it relates to some solutions to some of the problems. Everybody knows what the problem is. Now, what is the solution? And as I said, one of the major solutions, first, you have to connect your audience. Then any problem that you have that you want to solve, then you have enough individuals that are listening to the problem, because they have to solve the problem per se, one way or another. And most of the time it's who you vote for and where you spend your money. And that's where I'm saying educating on block voting and group economics. And that is the mark of the people that you have that are representing you. That should be the strategy that that group of politicians and leadership should have, a strategy to put our community in a situation where our vote really has a lot of weight, and where our community spends its economics have a lot of weight. And unless we have that on the table, and that just is not going to happen because you and me are talking about it. It's going to happen as we bring this younger group of individuals that are grassroots and give them an opportunity to speak to their community that doesn't cost anything. And our whole community, everyone has a phone that they can tune in to what these young people are talking about on our network. And then build that, teach one and just build that. And I think in 12 months, we can change the playing field.
Well, I'm totally with you on that, because there are two groups that we work with heavily. One is Show Me You Care KC. This young lady is remarkable, Shelley West, and she came up through the Justice Center. And the night of the thing, she walks into the room, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, she's here, great!" And then she turns around and goes, "You know what? But this is where I started at." See, pouring into them, they pour back into us. And then this other young man that I'm talking about, Level Up KC, Tay Taylor, is another one. So you have the entrepreneurs, you have the grassroots, you have both of those mixing together already, along with the businesses, along with the rappers, on all levels. And these are the national rappers out of Kansas City. You have the promoters, you have a young man that got out, several young people that got out of prison, came back, started businesses, and are hiring other people out of prison that are still within those 20s, millionaires. Now they're doing it the right way, and they're showing others how to get up off the streets. They're not talking about it. They are about it. And that's what I'm talking about. That's how you change the community.
That's how you change it. But that's why I said gangster posing as a businessman. No. You can't let your past dictate your future. And there's a lot of people in high places that have a lot of skeletons in their closet. Yeah. And our youth need to know that we're in a big trap and you're going to make mistakes, but don't let those mistakes dictate where you go forward. Yes. And if people are trying to cover up, I never did, and I'm like the lamb, and I'm white as snow, and all this other, then we're not being truthful, and we're saying there's a Santa Claus and there's a bunny rabbit, and we're not solving our problems. And I like to say that Black people, whether you want to admit it or not, you won't even tell your kids who the real enemy is, and you know who they are.
They're scared.
Yeah, I'm saying, when everything is built around economics and you really don't have no economics and you're not willing to sacrifice to build something, like I said, economic power and block voting power, then it is what it is. So in closing, what are your closing words to our community?
Don't give up. Don't turn around. Don't shut up. Keep pressing forward for the mark.
All right. And as we always say here at Cascade Media Group, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
This is brought to you by Kansas City Business Association, working to improve our community.